Hello, everybody. Welcome to All Things Dark and Cyberpunk. We're excited to have you here. We wish we could be with you in person in Indianapolis, but this way, people all over the world, people who couldn't come to Indianapolis, can be here with us. We are going to talk about Cyberpunk tonight, specifically Cyberpunk Red, which is our new edition of the game, classic role-playing game of the dark future. And I am here with Mike Pondsmith and James Hutt. And they are a good chunk of the team working on the game, and it wouldn't be happening without these two people. Nothing would be happening, of course, without Mike, because that's just the way the world works, especially the dark world of Cyberpunk.
Future of the Cyberpunk, right? Yeah, my desk has a little sign that says "profit."
We're excited to have you. We're going to talk about things. The one thing I want to get out of the way first and foremost is we know everyone's excited about getting the game. We know everyone is wanting to play. We will not be announcing a release date during this seminar. The world is topsy-turvy. We're aiming real hard for the end of summer, but distribution is weird, printing is weird, retail is weird, and all those sectors were hit very hard by COVID. And because of that, and because we have retailers out there we've had relationships with for decades, and we want them to we want to do right by them. And so we're planning our launch to try to make sure that they can make money off of it and maybe stay in business. So
there's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, thank you for your business. And we're going to get right to it. Mike, take it away, please.
Okay, well, I'm Mike Pondsmith, and as you've probably heard 1,000 times, I'm the guy who killed your Cyberpunk character. So one of the things we're going to be doing today is talking about Cyberpunk Red, what we're doing, because I've had a lot of time to work on it, think about it, and I've also been spending quite a lot of time, as has Jay and James, working on linking everything together in those histories so that we have a continuous time flow between the 2020 period all the way up to 2077. So while I'm not going to be revealing any amazing things about Cyberpunk 2077, I will be charting a bit of how the course all works and how things go together to get us from one end of the dark future to the other. So among the things we're going to talk about today are some of the things that were goals of mine and James and Cody's and Jay's as we went through developing this. And I even dragged my old AD, Dave Ackerman, in on it as well, because he's been with the system for, I guess, a good 25 years. So let's take it from the top. Cyberpunk Red, for those of you who have been following, is the new edition of the Cyberpunk, what we actually think of as a meta line. And essentially, when I started Cyberpunk Low many years ago, the idea was to not just do a game and have it stop, but rather do something that had the same kind of arc that you would get in a good comic book or novel series. I was really inspired by the ideas that were in Star Wars, for example. You could begin, have a cliffhanger, pick it up somewhere else, and what you'll see in Red is a continuation of things that we started working on way the heck back in the 2013 edition, such as Johnny Silverhand and his friends and that crew, and how their lives shifted through the 2020 period when Johnny is now a big star and doing a lot of cool things, and he has more cool friends. And then finally, what happens post that, which is where we are in the Red period, after Johnny, well, takes the big drop on the tower at Arasaka. So to do that, the first thing you have to do is you have to actually have a sense of where you're going to go. And one of the arcs about the Cyberpunk world is that it's like our world if you had stripped away all the clutter and you could see how the world developed or fell apart. So the 2013 period was about recovering from the sort of natural disasters, plagues, you name it, going on that wrecked not just the United States, but an enormous amount of the world, how you got to the edge of cyberpunk. But cyberpunk like that isn't really cyberpunk. That's post-Holocaust. So the next phase was to see what happens in 2020 as we evolve into a much more cyberpunk classic, giant corporations, corrupt governments, strange cults, bizarre road gangs, basically the things that are kind of classic to that genre. And 2020 took us there. But you can't stay in the same place all the time. So one of the areas I really wanted to explore was what happens when a cyberpunk world reaches its unnatural, what I'll call an extinction event. And in this case, the fourth corporate war was the extinction event. It was one which both extinguished all of the major characters, Morgan, Johnny, Raish, et cetera, and sort of wrapped their arcs. But at the same time, it also extinguished a way of life that the corporations had established, that the governments had established, how people had lived their lives. In 2020, everybody's at the bottom of the heap except the corporations. In Cyberpunk Red, named for the time of the Red, which I'll explain a bit more later, people are, much like corporations, tossed up in the air like a salad, and we're waiting to see who comes out on top. So it means that as a player in the Red period, you have more options, but with risk comes reward, but the risk will be greater. You used to be able to count on the idea that a corporation kept a certain level of stability, but there's no stability right now. There's nothing really driving the agenda except what you want to do with the future. And that'll eventually come out in the end in Cyberpunk 2077 when the megacorps are once again on top. But part of that process of how they get to the top in 2077 is about the negotiation between those very powerful entities of governments, of megacorps, of powerful people, and the street. So there's several things we're doing there. One is we're exposing a lot more history. For those of you who dialed in because you were looking for information on Cyberpunk 2077, what we're going to tell you in Red is a lot more of what came before in a greater level of detail. For example, we mentioned the Gang of Four and we mentioned the collapse, but we've never really gone into in depth. But I've had books literally 2 inches thick of data on what happened during that period and how we got there. Now we get to see how certain things evolve, why certain things happen in a cyberpunk universe. And this has been really interesting because doing all this history, which I wrote a long time ago and have been progressively moving, is interesting when you have partners on the other side of the globe and we're all trying to make it come out. And we actually have a partner we directly work with now. We used to work with like entire teams. And I remember, like 4 or 5 years ago would be me getting up at like 6 a.m. to talk to guys in Poland who were about to leave work at what was about 7 their time. And I'd be sitting in my pajamas going, all right, so we have to figure out exactly what happened in 2031. And we'd all negotiate it out. Now we have one person, and he's the big contact in terms of keeping all their storylines together and all of our storylines together so that everything in the end fits. And having that level of coordination means we can also put all kinds of Easter eggs in, things for you to find out, stuff that will happen in one side of the cosmology that will affect things that happen on the other side, stuff that happens way up in the future that now you'll see how it got there, how it got started. So we've kind of become Time Lords in the cyberpunk universe. So you're going to learn a lot more about how that world works, how it gets there, and the timeline all the way through that drives a cyberpunk universe. It isn't just kind of a one-off, like, yeah, we threw a bunch of pink and violet and blue on something, and we threw a couple flying cars in, and that was cyberpunk. No, this is a thought-out world. This is a world we have spent a lot of time developing, because the more you think about how a world works, the more real it becomes. So that's one of the things we're doing. James, I'm going to hand it over to you. You can tell them a few of the things we're doing with systems.
Okay. So
Hey everybody, this is James Hutt. He's the mayor of Balancetown,
Yeah,
and
we
he is
should explain
yeah,
Balancetown.
yeah.
So I'm a game designer on Cyberpunk Red, and one of the coolest cornerstones of this new edition is going to be the speed that everything moves. Uh, Fast, violent is the keywords for our combat, and we've in terms of how mechanically the game works, you'll find that your turns are shorter than they were in previous editions. They get the same amount done, and by sort of smoothing it out in terms of how fast we were able to make it, we were able to add in new, cool, interesting systems that keep the game violent and terrifying. Uh, one of the ones that I love talking about that you might already hear about, so I'm sorry if it's not new information, is critical injuries, which we grabbed over from Witcher, and we had to reinterpret them in a way that would make sense for you getting shot with a bullet more than you getting sliced in half with a sword. One of the cool parts is we have a table dedicated entirely to if you're critically injured by being shot in the head. I think you're gonna like it very much.
One of the important things we tried to do was to keep the realism line very, very high, and at the same time not let it bog things down. When we originally wrote the first editions of Cyberpunk, design was going through a phase where we were looking for absolute real simulation. And the reputation of Cyberpunk was that it was pretty darn close to real combat with guns, hand-to-hand, street alley stuff. One reason for that is one of the people who helped me work out damage was a ranger paramedic who'd been there in combat. Another person, a number of them were medical officers, or they were police, or they were military guys. And all of them could throw their 2 cents in to make sure that this felt like a firefight that they could have been in. But things have changed. We no longer do simulationism as much in game development. So what we tried to do is find that sweet spot where we cover all the bases of what should be a fairly realistic combat. But at the same time, we've sped that combat up. So it's system on overdrive speed. And James is a master at pulling that sort of thing off. I usually come with crazy ideas, and James figures out why the heck they should or shouldn't work.
Everything looks good, but the gold standard is how it plays on a table, and I'm confident that you're gonna like the way you look.
Yeah,
feels cheesy to say, but I think everyone's gonna have a lot of.
Well, I should explain, because Balancetown counts into that. Balancetown is basically James's playground. He has a very, very large table where we run combat simulations through it all the time. And after a while, because we were aiming for game balance, it became known throughout the company as Balancetown. And because James was the person always building and structuring the combats, eventually Cody Pondsmith and I decided that he was now the mayor of Balancetown. So a lot of what we looked at is keeping that balance cinematically throughout. Another really fun thing was that as we are developing systems, I also had been working on systems over at CDPR, and we talked a lot about where they wanted to go. So you may notice, for example, that they do some shorthands of things we have. The roles, for example, are not as hard and fast as we have them. They're much more, let's call them shaded roles, okay? You might think of them as being on, a curve instead. So one of the things we discussed, Adam Badowski and I, when we were putting this together and looking at 2077 was, could we make how the player plays cover more of what their roles are going to be? And there's some really cool things that evolved out of that. And then we brought that back into Time of the Red so that we could get that same feeling that as you did stuff, even in a role, it wasn't like every guy doing that role was the same. We wanted you to have a life that changed how your role was rather than the role straitjacketing you. So we've expanded a lot of that, which meant we expanded things on life path. We expanded a lot of things in terms of what your characters can do. We also made some really interesting shifts in the special abilities that characters have. And that was because, when I looked in retrospect, there were a lot of things that special ability characters had that were kind of similar. So this time, the goal was to make every special ability stand out and have a particular place in a group together. We'll talk about that when we discuss how to run the game in the Red books. We talk about the fact that you're now building more of a heist team. You're building more of a group of people who do have reasons to work together. They may not always like each other. They may not always work together. But now there's a reason for you as a exec corporate to be working with solos and net runners and all the other groups that we have, because they're not as rigidly defined by what those roles are. So it's an interesting way of looking at it. We've basically streamlined, and we've also added in more layers of subtlety. Jay, you have anything you want to throw into that?
Well, I thought what we would do is we'd run to some questions now, because we've got quite a few. We've laid out a lot, and I'm going to say that you can go to our website, rtalsoriangames.com. We have developer logs there, which talks about things like special abilities and how we're upgrading them. It talks about some of the new lore that you're going to find there. But let's see what we can tease out with the questions. First one I'm going to send to James. By the way, James, someone in chat said thank you for Triangulate.
Hey!
Wow!
Yep.
Wow! We got
James.
That may be my mom.
That's our boy.
Shush. In a past life, James was an app game designer, and Triangulate is one of the games he worked on, and it was a good one. So it was. I'm glad to see
hired, dude.
I'm glad to see some love for there. So Zachary is asking, this is a question for James. Will we be able to convert Cyberpunk 2020 stuff to Red?
Did they define stuff as like?
They said books, but why don't you just, off the top of your head, talk about what you know about, what you can talk about that. Guns, cyberware, vehicles.
Directly, not everything. Indirectly, some things. I'm not particularly sure about categories specifics at this point because I don't know where Mike is on putting specific charts into the book, and I don't want to confirm anything. You know what I mean?
I can explain a little bit of that, though.
Why don't you take this one?
Okay. Sorry.
What you put the layout.
Right. Well, what we've been trying to do is make sure that we haven't lost touch with 20 odd years of background. But if you're going to streamline things, you're going to have to streamline them quite a bit in order to make them work. So, for example, guns, James has got some really nice systems that will bring your weapons into date. So you can take your favorite weapon and you can basically do a couple minor calculations and shift it. But at the same time, we've also brought most of those weapons in and we've redone them for you so you can just plug them back in. You go, oh, I have Malorian. Okay, so it's now this. Fine, I still have a Malorian. And it also means that by coordinating that, when you play the video game and you say, I have a Malorian, you go, oh yeah, I have a Malorian. I had a Malorian now, I won in Red, I had one in 2020. So we try to keep all those major touchstones in place. That means also almost any piece of general lore, accepting things that were in the Cyberpunk V3 series, which is like a little side story now. Basically, that history is valid because it is a history all the way through to 77. If there have been changes, it's because we looked at it and said, we can't do that in a video game. It'll take too long to explain.
Cool.
Items, gear, we've gone through and tried to make sure that everything works pretty close to what it was, unless the problem was that either we learned more information about how it really would work, because a lot of the things we are coming up with now, in Cyberpunk, they were not thought of then. Case in point, we have a thing called the agent, which is basically a smartphone on drugs. But when we're Cyberpunk, we were lucky to get cell phones. So now knowing about what these sorts of things can do means that we effectively can up the ante. So how you'll get information will change a bit, but there'll still be screen sheets. There'll still be data terms. The biggest change, I would say, and James can fill me in if he has a different picture of it, is actually net running, where we've tried to keep net running faster and to not make the net runner a burden on the party. And for that, we changed a lot of the software.
Yeah, a lot of the net running is one of those things where where a lot of the programs are inspired by programs in 2020, but they had to be remade in a way to work with our new net running system. So that's one of those ones where that direct conversion will be difficult. But being inspired by an item in 2020 and pulling it in yourself is usually pretty easy, I'd say.
Okay.
And also, the thing you have to keep in mind is that, particularly with the net, we redesign things within the context of the entire story arc. So remember, 2020, the net blows up. There are rabbits everywhere. The net goes down. We don't have the net we used to have where you flew through cyberspace. We have a much more limited on-the-spot net. And we like that because that gave us a way to put the net runner in with the party and have that net runner do things that directly affected the party in real time with the rest of the group. So that was a big direction change. One of the things we did do, however, is as we changed the software, we made the software oftentimes affect things in the real world more than they did before. So for example, there are software programs like Demons that can do stuff with real world items that can get you into serious trouble. And maybe the party can use guns, or maybe the party's netrunner can shut it down. So netrunning did take a change, but that was because the entire structure of how the net worked and how we wanted to implement the netrunner role changed as well. So I think you guys are going to like it. It's a lot faster. So the playtesters have thanked us for it. Oh my God.
Yeah. So next question is a lore question. So that goes to Mike. They'd like to hear a little bit about Europe in 2045.
Okay. Europe in 2045. What has happened is Europe is recovering from a war. The fourth corporate was on the level of a small World War II, in that heavy armor, infantry, strike aircraft fought all over the world. But Europe, because of the nature of how it was structured, and the Euro Theater managed to keep the lid on for many places. So while, for example, what used to be Russia is now definitely gone back to more Soviet revengement, it's a weird oligarchical kind of Sovietism. Britain has kind of climbed out of the absolute chaos that it was, and now it's a very, very directed personality, leadership-driven state. The Central European countries have unified, but what they're facing is the rest of the world slipping out of their grasp. For example, a large part of the European theater dealt with the ESA and their high-tech high ground up in orbit. And when the Highriders revolt, they don't have that anymore. So all that orbital manufacturing, all that orbital high watch, the ships, the weapons, all that stuff is suddenly out of their hands. So there's a lot of power readjustment. There are many cities that look thoroughly untouched. There are many other cities that are basically flattened. Some place where, for example, Bonn, Germany, this was a banking area, and they figured pretty fast that if Arasaka took out the banking quarter, they could probably put a big hurt on Militech. So that area got wiped out. So you're going to find it's kind of a weird, vaguely post-World War II kind of feel to it, because there's a lot of rebuild going on. But all the nations are still there.
Cool. Going down the list. Someone wants to know if we're ever going to do anything like Alice Through the Mirror Shades again.
That sort of depends on whether or not we can convince the guys over in what was West End at the time to do that.
Yeah.
I don't think so, because that was a running gag that we've had with West End for years, and at a certain point, the people who were involved in that running gag aren't there anymore or have moved on. So it would be kind of like forcing somebody to listen to your really, really old dad joke.
What always gets me is that people notice, of course, Alice Through the Mirror Shades, they notice the big cyberpunk references and paranoia, but they completely miss the paranoia references that we hid in Cyberpunk.
Yes.
It is, by the way, in Home of the Brave, specifically in the Southwest, if you're looking for it.
You're not going to tell them, you're going to make them hunt for it.
I'm going to make them hunt for it.
Yeah, okay. Easter eggs.
Yeah, there's a question about cyber generation and how it fits into Cyberpunk Red.
Oh, here's the deal. Cyber generation is, much as they say in anime, a side story. Well, I tried something interesting with it, and this is Dave and I working it out, is it happens in the mainline continuity, but they get a grip on what causes the carbon plague. And because of that, it becomes isolated, and less than 100,000 people are really affected before they tamp it down. So what that means during the Red period is every so often you're going to run across some kid who's got it, or now lived through having it and has gotten out the other side. But that'll be an incredible rarity. So sort of think of it as like mutants. You'll be dealing with somebody you think you killed, and suddenly, the silvery form of the nano will then flow in to fix them. You'll go, what the heck? And then somebody else will head shoot it. So
nice. It
is there, but again, it is dialed way back as some of the many strangenesses that you're going to run across in Time of the Red.
Okay, so this next one is for James. I'm going to let everyone know there is, I believe, more cyberware in Cyberpunk Red than there was in 2020, a much larger list. And a while back, we had run polls to find out what everyone's favorite cyberware was. And some of them was really surprising. Like, we had no idea skate feet were so popular.
Yeah, I was shocked. Oh, yeah, one of the funny ones was skate feet. We ran a charity game of Cyberpunk Red several months ago for GaryCon. And Matt Lillard, who played the character Serial Killer in the original Hackers, was one of the people playing, and he insisted on skate feet. So at that point, we had to put it in.
Yep. So James, can you tell us a little bit about the cyberware, the pieces you really enjoyed converting over to Red?
Oh, for sure. Definitely my favorite thing to do when choosing, okay, what needs to be here? What do we need to bring forward, is Googling the phrase. My favorite piece of cyberware in Red, my favorite piece of cyberware in 2020 to use was X. All manners of that sentence. I feel like I crawled most of the entire internet, including very, very old message boards. One of my favorites to convert was, of course, skate feet, lovely. But all manner of the pop-up gun, the pop-up arm being so iconic for 2020. I managed to get a pop-up arm that would be, it would not only be very modular, like you can put almost anything in a pop-up, but it also makes sense what you can't put in a pop-up. And the rules that break that rule make interesting items too, like the old school, what is it? Arm grenade launcher. That's only one shot. That's on the Cyber Psycho, I believe. Brightman.
Yeah.
In.
Back to the penalty box.
Back to the penalty box. Oh yeah, great screen sheet. And I guess bringing forward all of the cyber eye options and figuring out how they'd work, given the new agent system, figuring out how to make Chiron make sense. I didn't get as far as individually breaking out some of the cyber eye stuff, but I managed to group them together. In fact, even though I grouped a lot of ideas together into, hey, this would be a more future version of this, technology has even improved in some areas. There are still more cyberware options in this book than in
Yes.
2020.
Yep.
And we have more piling up. Yeah, one of the other interesting things we have is we not only have more options, but we have kind of an interesting thing, which James is a big part of, which is economies. So the cyberware used to be, you go down to the shop, you pay your EV, you get the thing implanted. If worse comes to worse, you get it illegally done by Riverdoc. All that infrastructure has been blown away in the time of the Red. So what's happening instead is many of the really weird and cool kind of Chromebook 5 level things are more like magic items almost. They are things that you have heard about, you know that they're out there. We've put a little bit more of a spin because of this collapsed economy, more of a feeling of quest items, things that are important. Not everybody's got it now. So if you want to get a Malorian, you don't just go down to the store and buy it because there's no really good gun stores. Instead, you're going to have to get somebody to locate it. And that might actually be something that drives the entire party quest. And that was one of the cool things about looking at a post-war, but not totally collapsed post-Holocaust world, is economies still exist. You can get stuff, but you can't get it easy all the time. And that's a large chunk of what we've done with some of the less common cyberware, is to make it something that players will go, yeah, I really want to get that. Another thing is we had to make a lot of the things we're doing meld into what would happen in 77. So for example, the convertible kind of weapons that you see right now in the demos for 77, we have the earlier editions where they're just beginning to make those, and the people who will design and make them. But again, they're more like specialty things, quest items, special people you have to locate, gear you have to get to implement it, things that your tech can do to eventually invent that. So again, there's much more agency happening there. It's not just walking in the store and saying, yeah, I'll take 2 of those.
Okay. Mike, we have a question about the teas that you put into the Jumpstart kit for Johnny Silverhand in the after the Fourth Corporate War, and they want to know if we'll be exploring that further in Cyberpunk Red.
We are going to explore some of it, but we don't want to give anything away in 77. There are teases about Johnny all the way down the line. And I have to admit, when we talked to the CDPR guys, and we started talking about what we wanted to do and what they were aiming at and what we were aiming at, we had to go do a little bit of retconning, but it was very, very minor. Like, why does Johnny have dark hair now? You know, that sort of level. But overall, we don't want to give away too much. There are Easter eggs that will allow you to follow Johnny's progression all the way through into 77. But you're going to have to take those pieces and carry them with you as you play the game and go, okay, now I see how that happened.
Excellent. James, tell us about martial arts.
Okay. Martial arts is a super cool new system we have in our melee system for combat. And how it works is it's a difficult skill, meaning it's harder to learn than other skills, kind of almost just as hard to learn as the god tier combat skill auto fire. And it fulfills the same role that auto fire does, except in a melee space instead of a ranged space. So you get your skill, and every time you level that skill, you're choosing which form you're training in. And we have, I believe, 6 forms in the core book. And each one gives you 2 special moves that you can do that are awesome, that break the game in their own special way. You can you remember the cornerstone of targeted shots. This is targeted shots through the lens of that critical injury system I talked about earlier. Remember that thing where somebody can target your head and do extra damage? Well, now with your martial arts strike, you can do a targeted skull break. You can crack their skull. So it gets to the level where you're like, yeah, I'm grappled. I want to do this special martial arts move I have from my form. And not only do you get to get out of the grapple, but you could do something as granular as get out of the grapple and break their arm for it.
Basically, what we tried to get was a little more of not video game in the sense of technologies or style, but more the fact that video games work really well by having special moves. And there's something about when you're playing, an old side scroller or whatever, that that there's a thing that you should use right here, and this will settle the combat. A particular move that's the finishing move or the change up move or whatever. We wanted to carry a lot more of that in so that martial arts wasn't just, well, you get a +2 here, you get a +3 there, and you're a little better. We wanted martial arts to really be stylish and fun. But since, we've all taken some martial arts of various sorts, and I know that my senseis would beat me to death if I, totally screwed this up. We've tried to keep the same feelings, and indeed the forms that we chose are set up to reflect different categories and styles in existing martial arts.
Yeah, I can say that we definitely have judo, we definitely have aikido, and I made sure that we have taekwondo.
So Mike, fine. We have a lot of questions. Actually, I have 5 or 6 of them about that people want to know about Africa and the Highriders.
Ooh, okay. I'm not going to tell you guys an enormous amount because I'm putting together a Highrider book. In fact, I was doing it earlier today. I was doing stuff on that I have to show you, James. It's cool. But basically what happens is, as you remember, the Highriders decide to declare independence because they don't want to get involved in the Groundsiders' war. And that's because a habitat can die really fast if somebody throws a kinetic rock at it. So their answer is to throw even bigger rocks and hit Earth. That's one reason why we have the time of the red, is you throw a bunch of rocks into the desert in different places or near cities, you raise a lot of dust. In fact, if you drop something on a Siberian plateau, you're going to end up with volcano type action going on. So the Highriders at this point are that guy that's, a next door neighbor who's too darn dangerous to screw with. But they have their own agendas, and that agenda is basically to make sure nobody gets into space and gets the drop on them from now on. And they in turn have gotten a very, very tight coordination with the nomads and the nomad families and nomad nations. So they're kind of the space to ground transportation side. They build the orbital plastics and the orbital systems and things like that. And the nomads in turn trade upstairs to them with deltas and so forth. So right now, we'll get into the Highriders in a larger amount because I'm doing a specific book about them, and it'll be a little less about the kind of level that Near Orbit was, where it was a little more granular about here's the NASA stuff. This is a little more what individuals and places and workshops are going to do. And what we're setting up now is a group of people who have found their freedom, have ridiculous technology, but don't have a lot of resources. How do they keep themselves alive?
Excellent. James, you have gotten a chance to really play with the rules and do all kinds of scenarios. If you were running Cyberpunk, a full campaign, and you wanted to just not do just now I'm doing a mission, now I'm doing a mission. Say you wanted to have what are the equivalent of mini games in a video game, where someone goes off and plays Gwent, or in 2077 we'll have street racing and some possibly boxing. What kind of mini games would you suggest for a Red campaign?
I would, I would, I would, that's hard. Definitely, we have a gamble skill. That's a dedicated skill just for that. So I guess if you're doing that, you're doing that. Probably if you were going to play a video game competitively against somebody, like a fighting game, I'd probably put a technique roll, add a D10. If you'd make sure to use the never done this before modifiers and stuff for newer players, or maybe you give them a little +2 for the new player luck.
I think there's another one you haven't hit, which is the tech tree is also kind of a mini game in that the way things have been set up, you get to make stuff, and the weirder the better. And so there's a whole lot of, Lego putting it together to get this outcome.
Oh yeah, the whole edition, we put in extreme amounts of modularity. It's all just a big Lego set for you to do whatever you want. And our general rule was that techs get to break those. So I think you're going to be able to build whatever you want if you're a tech, because you're a tech. You should be able to. You're right.
And you can definitely
think of it as MacGyver.
Yep, you could definitely do a demolition derby. There are going to be rules for that. Okay, let's see. Going down the list.
Oh, and also there's a section which is basically street things that you do in terms of fun. And we have Body Lotto, we have Friday Night Firefights, and a couple other that I guess would be considered to be minor mini games. Bet on how many bodies you can bring in. You have an ice chest, get 3 livers, that kind of thing.
That is true. So yes, the Body Lotto still exists in Time of the Red. So what we're going to do here, I think, is because we are running off on 15 minutes to the end of the day, and Mike has to go host an award show after this.
Yep. See me at the Annies, kids. You should attend. It'll be fun.
What I'd like to do is talk about things that are coming for Cyberpunk. We, of course, are working on the core rulebook. And do you want to talk about what's coming after that with Black Chrome?
Black Chrome. Well, we're still working on. We started Black Chrome actually before we finished what we're doing in Red. Black Chrome is basically, as I like to call it, it's the new sharper image book for survivalists. So it is much more in terms of things you will need to be on the road, things you will need to do to survive in the new combat zone, stuff you need if you're going to choose to live in the hot zone. So that particular book is designed for people to move into the Red period and get the things they need. That being said, it's also designed so that people have to look for them. They have to assemble. They have to find more bits in pieces. It doesn't just come off the rack. And part of that is support another really cool thing we have happening in Red, which is the night market. The night market is a really cool thing. It's effectively pop up on the street. You get an invitation on your agent and show up, and a bunch of people throw up stalls or open up containers, and they sell things that have just been brought in by the smugglers, the nomads, the guys off the street, renegade techs, etc. And you're there with your fixer trying to make deals to get really cool things, because the night market may only last an hour or 2. And then there's midnight markets, which are even more scary.
We're looking forward to that. The daytime markets is, where you buy unicorns and puppies.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Because they taste good.
They yeah. Meat's,
Eat the meat.
What is it? There's a line in Raish Bartmoss's Guide to the Net where he talks about how the neighborhood has no cats and no dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only cats there are his.
Yeah. Which, by the way, don't mess with his cat.
Yep.
So what I'd like to do now is talk a little bit about our partners. I'm going to go first with Q Workshop is making dice. They have 2 sets out right now, which is a full polyhedral set and what they call the Cyberpunk Essential set, which is just D10s and just D6s. You can pick those up from their site. Yep, they are beautiful. And the game still runs with D10s and D6s. You're not going to need anything else for it. We love them. Sirenscape, they make sound sets. You can purchase individually or subscription. They have 2 Cyberpunk Red sound sets out: the Apartment, which goes with the apartment adventure that's in the Jumpstart kit, as well as the Forlorn Hope, which Forlorn Hope is a classic setting in 2020, and Mike has did an update of it for his game he ran. He talked about the game he ran with Matthew Lillard, where the Forlorn Hope is moved, but it's still a great place for edge runners to hang out and to get in and out of the Blood Rain. And the last thing I want to do is show off, because we're all about style over substance. Can we switch over, David? I want to say thank you, by the way, to David Gillespie and High Shelf Gaming for hosting us. So thank you for that. Okay, we're good.
Thanks.
Okay, so we have partnered with Monster Fight Club to do miniatures, and we are super excited about this, because in the past, maybe we'd hook up with a miniature company and maybe they do a couple sets and then they move on to somebody else, but we are doing all kinds of things. This is
one
go ahead,
of the
Mike.
cool things is that they are just absolutely enthusiastic to give us the best possible miniatures.
Yeah. So what we have here is these are available now, and this is what they call the basic Jumpstart Set 1 and the Jumpstart Set 2. They are a good quality resin. They are fantastic. They paint very well. I've seen some really great paints of them. You can get this guy if you like. We're very proud of Mike and his dog. Actually, we're more proud of the dog.
Thank you.
But you can get Mike as a cop.
Guys are going to all have this happen to you sooner or later, so they're
Not sure
Don has insisted that.
Hey, you know what? If they slim down my waistline, I'm not going to complain. And but this has just come out. This is their press conference bundle, and it's across 2 medias, 2 rockers, and a exec. And if you're ever like, how do I run a campaign with a rocker and a solo? And this is it right here. You got the medias covering them, you got the exec running things for them, you got the rockers, and you got a solo bodyguard. That's a whole campaign. You could do dozens of sessions based on that easily. And then this is really exciting. So they have what they call the Metropolis Terrain Set, and it is basically buildings. Their Kickstarter is just finished, but you can still do late pledges. And it is basically build a building terrain with these beautiful barrels and boxes, and you can see these great setups, and it's amazing. We are so excited to be working with them. And
I've got to add one more thing, gang.
Yeah, by all means.
This is one of John over at Monster Fight Club's pet projects. And if you notice, looking up at the windows are a little more 3-dimensional. That's because windows in this design are transparent. You can see in and you can see terrain and gear placed within that. If you're going down at night and you're looking in to windows on the street, you can literally see contents of street display shops and things like that. It's insane.
It is pretty cool.
And it's also stackable. It's pre-colored. It's incredibly light and durable. We have one building that we've now sent to at least 4 cons, and somehow or another, it's like just the way it was when we first got it. When John walked over and said, "Here, you guys need a building."
It is pretty cool. And honestly, it's just amazing because, like he said, it's stackable. So you could set up floor 1 and floor 2 and floor 3 and just remove the top floors. And then when you're ready to go down to the next floor, pull that next floor off and you're ready to go because your miniatures and your furniture are already set for the battle scene you're doing. So you can do floor to floor battles. And I know I've heard some people talking about using these with the Cyberpunk net running system, the Red net run system, where basically, if for those who know, actually, James, you explain it because you do better than I do.
So the Cyberpunk Red net running system consists of it's a linear elevator with some branching on it, and I'm unfamiliar with what you're referring to though, Jay.
Well, the idea being you have these stacks and each one's a room, and you would just go down the levels, and you can set up little miniatures with your programs and your black ice and your demons.
They're working on that. That may be something you get.
I didn't even know that people are doing that. That's cool.
Yep. They snuck it up on you. No, you have to remember, James, is that the guys over at Monster Fight Club, John over at Monster Fight Club never sleeps, literally. I have had him sometimes drop me a text at 3 in the morning, which means it's 6 in the morning where he is. And he'll go, "Hey, Mike, you got to take a look at this." And I'm like, "What? God dang, that's really amazing." Because of that, they do a lot of experimentation. John is currently really excited about the idea of doing 3D representations of some of the net stuff, because the net stuff actually impinges much more on what the entire party is doing within an adventure. So you might have a demon manifest that you're both fighting in real space and non-real space at the same time.
Yep. So we have a few minutes left. If you want to go to James and let Mike wrap up parting comments, something you're excited for when Red drops for everyone to see.
Go for it, James.
Oh man, I'm just so excited to see people post their characters, what they made, what they're doing with the character gen. I feel like I've made like too many characters at this point. I need to see your guys' characters. I need to see your guys' ideas. I need fresh.
Yeah, one of the things that's one of the things I really miss was if Gen Con, we would be seeing people building characters and having a really good time doing it. There are so many cool things that we've added to this, expanded stuff in life paths, special abilities, cool looks, cool gear. We even have fashion sections now. It is really a lot of fun. And, you know, I headlined a bunch of stuff, but I couldn't do without these crazy people getting in there and figuring out how we actually would make this work. So we're looking forward to seeing all of you in real space instead of on internet space. And
can't wait.
Yeah, this is going to be loads of fun. And we hope to have this out to you as soon as we can basically get everything sorted out between printers, distributors, stores, CD, you name it. We're getting it all kind of put together. And then, you know, we got a pandemic to deal with. So
a lot of moving parts.
A lot of moving parts, but stay tuned because the wait, much like with 77, which by the way is freaking awesome. I wish there were so many things I wish I could show you. At any rate, it will be worth the wait.
Yes. Okay, so I want to thank everyone for coming on behalf of R Talsorian Games and Mike and James and myself. I know we did not get to everyone's questions. There were so many of them, and we do not have another hour. But we want to thank you for being enthusiastic and for supporting Cyberpunk. And just stay safe, you know, on the streets and in your home, because it's a rough world out there right now.
Yep. If you're going to wear a mask, wear a Cyberpunk mask.
I can't end on anything better than that. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Next year in Indianapolis.
See you there.